everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of season 2, The Surrealistic Virtuoso. This is your host, Ali Ahmad Sheikh. Today, we will be talking about art, its surroundings, journey of an artist, social issues, political issues in relation with art. About our guest today, an international artist, curator, writer, and a teacher. Her journey with art has been super lengthy and still on. I will require a day to just mention about her solo shows, art fairs, exhibitions, and achievements at different art galleries across the globe. But in brief, I will mention few things. Born in Bangalore in 1958, she completed her graduation from the Faculty of Fine Arts, MS University of Baroda in 1981. She then received the INLAC scholarship for her MA in painting from Royal College of Art, London in 1984. In 1988-89, she was invited as a guest artist to the Stockholm and was also invited to deliver a series of lectures on Indian art at the École Beaux-Arts Grenoble at Castello di Rivello, Torino in 1991. She did a short stint at the Fulham Institute on Film and Video and was conferred the staff fellowship from the Rockefeller Foundation Asian Cultural Council to work in the US in 1990. Her work describes complex issues of life and living, of alienation and belonging, of discrimination and acceptance, of accord and discord. It is of paramount importance to this sensitive artist to repeat pragmatically to socio-political attitudes that surround her. Her work reflects her sensitivity towards socio-political attitudes along with the reflections from the past. She does not treat art and life in isolation and deems it necessary to experience life to paint. Her fervent activity of painting is a struggle for her own rightful existence. The artist explains to say, I go through all the terror and agony of stepping into an unknown. Her images are a byproduct of her thoughts and emotions. Her readings, observations, beliefs, values, and vast compilation of past experience. She has always been concerned with the representation of the female figure in her quest to find the vocabulary to represent women without objectifying them, without allowing the viewer to play the role of voyeur. She represents large clothed Goniksky women as the archetypal figure in their daily work rituals, glorifying their tools and objects that surround them in a celebration of the female protagonist. She has represented India in several prestigious art shows internationally, apart from a series of workshops and lectures on Indian art. 1997-98, she was appointed by the Government of India as an advisor on art and culture to the Central Lalit Kala Committee, Delhi, India. Her works are in various private and public collections in India, UK, USA, Brazil, Italy, West Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, and the Netherlands. We have with us very gorgeous and stunning Rekha Rodvitya. Welcome to the PID webinar, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am, it's been a long journey and you are still on. And the amount of artwork that you've done, can you please share how did it all start?
Thank you so much for your introduction. I wish the gorgeous and the good-looking bits could be kept out, as well as, keeping it less sexist. Anyway, but thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I think because the main focus of our audience are going to be students, I think that let me start very simply by, relating to and to all of them a certain sort of sequence of my life. So my father was in the Air Force. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. And so we went from one place to another. And so in some ways, not having a permanent location and not having a permanent sort of residential home that one could call one's, permanent sort of abode, in many ways helped one, because it kind of allowed one and allowed me as a young child to grow into the understanding of what sort of the pluralistic nature of what India really is. I have, as I've often said on many of these interviews that I've had with people, that I was homeschooled till I was 7 years old because of ill health. And I sort of joined school at a later stage than other students or other children. I think that period of time that I was being homeschooled was an important part in what impacted my personality or impacted my connection with the world. Both my parents come from very elite and educated backgrounds. And so I was sort of encompassed within a certain kind of environment that always held aspects of refinement, whether it was about music or whether it was about what we were placed into contact with in relation to literature, the kind of plays or dramas that we were exposed to. So all of that became the sort of collective area of what impacted my childhood. But in that isolation of growing up homeschooled, it was art that really played a very big part in my life, because I used to occupy myself a lot with drawing. And so I found that it became a tool, or became a vehicle for me that allowed me to be able to sort of, as I always say, communicate with myself and also sort of negotiate the world as a child does. You had asked me earlier before the webinar started as to whether Baroda, was home always for me, or whether I was not living over here. And so I came to Baroda when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. And so by default, Baroda has become home. Whilst my father went to different places, my parents decided that for my schooling, it would be better that they stayed in one location. And I must also say at this point, that my parents always desired girl children. That was something that was part of their politics. They also, I think, represented in many ways a certain type of India that in some ways is fast disappearing. It was an India that kind of exemplified Nehruvian ideals about modernism and progress, where we were encouraged to understand that humanism was really the core factor to what should be the layout of the tapestry of our lives. We were not encouraged to merely prescribe to any specific cultural rituals, but we were in fact encouraged to understand and partake of the multi-dimensional factors of India. And so I think that it was a very holistic kind of upbringing that I have been privileged to sort of engage with. I also think that it was very fortunate in many ways that Baroda became my home. I think that this old Gaikwad principality is a sort of city very seeped and steeped in cultural practices that have actually patinaed the city to hold something quite unique. I think that we have a tradition of education that has been invested in by the vision of the Gaikwads, and we see it in the university that it has. We've had the tradition of wonderful practices of music and literature that has been invited into the city from decades. It was common practice when we were young to sort of go to the Darbar Hall in the palace and listen to music concerts that went on all night. And so I must say that, this city, which invites, which has also some of the leading industrialists that have, contributed to the progress of India, not just to the city. But there's also great humility within the city. I find that the people who have actually been the stalwarts, whether in industry, whether in cultural practices, whether as educators, there is a kind of humility within which one has grown up in. And I think that has been a great lesson that the city has offered. I went to the Faculty of Fine Arts, not because it was located in my city, but because it really was the premier institution at that time. We didn't have any reservation policies in those days. And so the environment of people applying was very different. You really had the creme de la creme coming. And you had, in my batch at least, I had a lot of mature students who had already finished degrees in literature, philosophy, political science. And so they came with very wonderfully articulated ideas in terms of what they wanted to kind of create as their territories of inquiry. We also were, and I must say, this is perhaps the greatest gift that I received, was at that time the college, the Faculty of Fine Arts, had some of the best teachers of India, of Asia perhaps. We had K.G. Subramaniam, we had Nasreen Mohammadi, we had Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, Jyoti.
Wow.
We had really wonderful, wonderful people who once again understood and brought to the educational platform ideas about cohesiveness of learning. It was not, in fact, the climate of the Faculty of Fine Arts in those days where I grew up as a student was all about the ideas of inclusiveness. It was really about opening up the doors of education to multiple areas of comprehension. So whether it was aesthetics, whether it was philosophy, whether it was literature, whether it was music, folk and artisan practices, you name it. And I think that the rigor of education was perhaps far greater, maybe because it was an environment where we didn't have access to the kind of spaces of exposure we have today. Today we have the internet, we have travel, we have a better economy maybe. And so when you have less of those things, you always have a tendency to have greater strife. And strife brings on something that allows you to have a sort of fire in your belly, and it takes you just that little bit, you run that little bit faster. So I think that all of these things did contribute to certainly impacting me. The next sequence to this would be that I found it important to open up my spaces of learning to less familiar environments. And so I therefore applied for a scholarship, and I was fortunate to get a scholarship and chose to go and study at the Royal College of Art. So that I kind of think gives a sequence to my educational space. The question you ask is very open-ended. So when you talk about the notions of the journey of being an artist, I think that maybe I would attempt to bring in something a little bit more specific. Again, because I'm talking primarily to a student audience, I think that it's very important. It's always been very important for me throughout my years of practice to insist that I have to be the best that I can be. And it's interesting because, and I thank you very much for your kind introduction, but to me, none of that really is important. At the end of the day, accolades or, all of that are just, things that it's like yesterday's news. It really doesn't matter after a point. What matters is how you live your life without sort of desiring the accolade or desiring that, you are somebody. And that really is what will cultivate for yourself a kind of discipline to maximize your potential. Because in other words, you place yourself. Of course, you look at the world around you and you look at things in a comparative sense. But it also is important to know yourself and why you live and why you do what you do. And so in relation to myself, I have always wanted to be the best that I can be, which is about honing my abilities and understanding how I can maximize my time so that when I look back at yesterday, even in that small framework of a time sequence, it should not be with regret. It should be that I have, propelled myself to do and to use time efficiently and with purpose.
Great, ma'am. So, ma'am, you said it is just yesterday. No, it has been number of years and with a lot of work that, I have seen it during the research. But anyway, ma'am, tell us about your interest in art during your childhood. Were you interested in pursuing art right from the beginning?
Yes, as I shared with you, because I was sort of in this environment of self, being homeschooled, art or drawing and painting became very seminal to the space of learning for me. And I think that throughout my life, throughout my childhood, till I came into making the decisions, I always knew I wanted to be a painter. So from the age of 5, I have always stated that I wanted to be a painter, not
Wow.
an artist, a painter. And I think that because, as I said, we were very revered children. I have a sister who's 5 years elder to me. We have been brought up to desire to hold our desires and to create the realizations of what those desires mean for us. And so my sister wanted to, try her hand at flying. Well, she did. She didn't become a pilot, but so there was no gender restrictions, religious restrictions. We were simply asked to define ourselves through understanding what we wanted to be, and to then understand that we had to learn through failure, because nobody can be a success unless you have applied yourself to a learning process. And in learning, you have to be humble enough to know that you're going to fall many times. So whether it's in the process of learning about art, or whether it's the process of, living every day, trying to be a good neighbor, or trying to be an efficient teacher, or trying to be a proper friend, these are all spaces where, you learn on a daily basis about yourself as much as you learn about what you give. So I think that life is also really very much about this process of understanding how the individual exists within a collective. So to try to answer your question again, art has always been very important to me, simply because it's what is the tool that best, by which I can best articulate myself, Ali. So it is, I don't, in fact, I've always said, my desire is to de-romanticize, this idea that, anything creative sets us apart. I think that whatever you choose to desire to do will prompt you to apply yourself and to apply your space of learning. And so then that journey begins. I think to be an artist requires you to have a comprehension that it's not something about, throwing paint on a wall, or, running down a street screaming. What you need to know is that to every, which I'm sure you do, but what I'm stating as a general sense is that what people need to understand is that to every discipline, there are many, many factors that, become the scaffolding through which you can then build the context of who you are. So art is also based on those, principles. You have to understand aesthetics. You have to learn about political and cultural histories. you have to have a comprehension of understanding form, and many other things that go into the makeup of becoming an artist.
So, ma'am, now you went to Royal College of Art. So, coming back to India, do you think your art practice got a different dimensions and directions? I mean, did it create any difference after going from Vadodara to RCA and then coming back, or the whole experience? If
I think that that's an interesting question. I think that for me as a person, I was quite defined as an individual. I think your life choices also structure your maturity. And so I think that during the process of my undergraduate program, and as I said, I've had some wonderful teachers who were really seminal to my learning. And so I think that I was very clear about the scholarship of my education, of what I was investing within myself as to what was the kind of content and what was I reposing within myself as being information and areas of learning. And that I was going to the Royal College of Art was not because I was going to go there and forget what I had done here and start doing something that was, new. I was going there because I wanted to actually take time to consolidate something that I was already carrying with me as an individual who had studied already for 6 years in an art college. And I wanted to spend time in kind of honing that. I also chose the Royal College of Art very specifically because it would allow me then to, engage with the world of my concerns as they already were formulated. And I went and studied under somebody called Peter de Francia, who had a very long track record of understanding and being engaged with India and Indian art practitioners, and also was empathetic to the kind of politics that I was coming from. Also, don't forget that, Britain is, we were part of Britain for many years, and so we share sort of histories. And so I also wanted to be in a space which understood where I was excavating, an educational treasure box to make my own. And I've always said that, wherever you go, especially, in those wonderful formative years of being a student, when you travel, you very rarely go without luggage. You always pack a little bag. And, most of us have, if we're traveling far distances these days, we generally go by plane and you have a lot of restriction on luggage. So you have a very small amount of things that you can take with you. And that's what you then decide as to what it will be. And so I think that, that's a great metaphor, that you decide what is essentially going to be you. And that stays with you for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter where you go and who you're talking to and who you're meeting. There has to be an inner core that makes sense to you. Now, that doesn't mean that one chooses not to be open to, influences or open to learning. But learning is not something that, you throw out things all the time to replace other things with. What learning is it's an addition and a kind of, you add on and you create something larger by the process of this, bringing to yourself more things. In that process, you also weed out, but you don't empty yourself out completely. So to answer your question, I think the time of being in London for me as a student at the Royal College of Art, which was a very rigorous program, and I was doing a 3-year course in 2 years. I stood first in 27 departments. Now, the reason nothing very great about it. I'm sure many students would do that. But the reason I say that is because I think that it always does oneself good if you are strict and very stringent with the manner in which you use your time. And I think that it brings me back again and again. So I did 200 paintings when I was there. I traveled 4 months in Europe. I did a night school at for film and television at Fulham. I wrote a thesis, and I had fun too. It just depends on how much you're willing to work. And so I think that London was a great testing ground for me. I was also away from things that were familiar. I was away from my son, who was only 3.5 years old, and I didn't see him for 2 years. But that was the root of the INLAC scholarship in those days. And after 1 year, they called me and said, "If you want, you can go back." And I said, "No, because if I do go back, you won't remember that you said that, and then you will, in the historical sense of things, you will turn around and say, 'Oh, these ladies who come, who have children, want to go back to see their children.'" And so I was very strict with myself. And so you use your life and you use your opportunities to get the best that you can for yourself. And you learn through these processes, not by losing yourself. So whether you travel to London or whether I'm sitting in Baroda, you similarly remain the same person, I hope.
Yes. Acha, beside RCA, see now, because you already mentioned that the kind of mentors and the teachers you had while, training yourself in Fine Art Baroda, they were all amazing. And also the training that you got from RCA. I mean, I don't think I want to even ask for any comparison because of the kind of mentors that you had. But today, since you've been also into academics for a very long time, do you feel that international institutions are different in teaching now, or maybe there's some kind of difference there and here in today's scenario?
I think that India boasts of some of the greatest institutions in all fields. I think that I used to be on the INLAC's committee for a long time, and I would always make certain that whoever we were talking to, that we understood that the student had maximized their opportunities in India. I think that there are, the entire educational system in India does need to have a little bit of a rethink. But that doesn't necessarily mean at all that I'm stating that educational institutions in India are under par to any foreign institution. Not at all. I think we have some of the best educators. I would also like to say that, let us be very clear that education is not only in the big name institutions of any country. We have some of the most amazing teaching happening, in mobile schools that teach, children who may be, migrant labor, belonging to migrant labor families. We have amazing examples of people who teach in villages, or who have given up their jobs and are doing alternative practices to, infuse better education. I know that there are many corporate houses that are also attempting to look at how they can give greater opportunity to those who may not be economically in the position to have access to such schools. So I want to be very, very clear that, my perception of education is not just, Ivy League colleges and, IITs, much as I salute them. But there are also, educational spaces that maybe you and I are unaware of that are doing amazing, amazing work to bring opportunities to people who don't necessarily have economic means. So education is very dear to my existence. I firmly believe that, it is one of the greatest stepping stones. How you get it does not necessarily mean that it has to come packaged as a degree. You may be homeschooled for all of your life. You may not go to a university, and you may travel and you may apprentice and you may find your educational spaces through that. So I'm not a snob about, the sort of labels of education. What one needs to have is the humility to learn. So that's important.
Okay, ma'am, I just figured that, a personal journey of discoveries that you had in 2017 in conversation with my mother's daughter. Can you please talk about it? Because it's something that I'm personally interested to know.
Actually, that's a title of a text I've written, as well as it's a title of a particular painting I've done. But let me say that it's actually taken from Alice Walker. And I think a lot of my conversations, quote unquote, come from the many visits of the phantom writers, because nobody comes physically, that I read, So I have a lot of chitter-chatters with, Alice Walker and Toni Morrison and, Amy Tan. And I think it's what you bring to your life in terms of who you converse to or converse with. And so I think I've been very fortunate. And so what I was really talking about was having a conversation with myself. And so I was in conversation with my mother's daughter, which was really neat. And yes, and I think that, if I slightly expand that and talk about it from a feminist perspective, I have always stated that my genealogy of belonging is really within the ancestries of all of womanhood, and that it cuts across geographies and it cuts across cultural territories. I see that the lessons to be learned from the many stories of women, told and untold, documented and lost, that have allowed me to have the erectness of my existence, that I am able to stand tall as a woman and negotiate with a very, very patriarchal world. That is because of the journeys of joy, of sorrow, of strife, of struggle, of celebration, of achievement, of triumph that centuries of women have given to me. And so in conversation with my mother's daughter is really about that.
Okay. So now moving on to the next one, your solo exhibitions, so many solo shows that you've done, but I have picked few, like My Body, My Land in 1997, Time Zones, which was in 1999, Once Upon a Time in 2003, and Second Skin in 2006. Ma'am, so any of these projects, or maybe all of them in brief, your paintings and the stories that you have, while working on it, can you please share some with us or the viewers?
I'm going to really disappoint you, Ali. It's not as it's a very difficult thing to talk about a body of work when its visuals are not there. However, let me try to address what your question can hold for me. So the way I approach any body of work that is a collection of work that I am doing in order to then put it from my studio, which is a private space, out into a public space, which is the gallery. It's a process where I decide what my territory of communication is going to be. Now, I'm a very, very boring person, and in time you will realize that. So I have a very tiny window of perception, which is into politics. I'm looking at the world from that window, from the time I was 13 till I suppose the time that I died. And so I always equate it to being like a very, very tiny garden within which I continuously try to sow many different things. So I continuously, cultivate that small patch of land, which is the territory of my concerns. So if you understand the metaphor that I am trying to create for you. So
Okay, ma'am.
exhibition is dealt with in that way. So what I attempt to do is that, first of all, I don't make pictures. My work, I don't call them pictures. And why that is in no way trying to be, dismissive of the word. But what I'm dealing with is and I keep using this phrase. So let me use it again and then try to explain it. I always say that my life as an artist is my attempt to negotiate myself within the world that I live in. So what does that mean, Ali? It means this, that um, look at what happened in America over the last 3 days. Okay. Now, if one was part and parcel of that, it would have a certain type of meaning if one was an American citizen and what your allegiances would be. It has certain impacts to me as an individual living in India, because I'm looking at the manner in which democracies are being reinterpreted and perhaps destroyed. So, what has that got to do with what I'm talking about in terms of negotiating the world? So these things impact me as an individual, and that individual is an artist. And so, whatever occurs through the process of my living within the location of my time, that is what is going to become the influences or the telescope through which I am looking at life around me. Let me give you one more example. For example, when I was a student, we were all concerned about the apartheid movement. We were all concerned about freeing Nelson Mandela and changing the apartheid regime. But I'm Indian. I'm sitting in India. What has the South African regime got to do with me? But it has everything to do with me, because one does not belong only to the location of a geography. One also belongs to the location of a larger political base. And so, whilst I was a student in London, for example, I never applied for any kind of bursary or competition or funding that had South African money, because I did not want to have anything to do with that regime. Now, did that change the world by this one Indian student doing that? Maybe not. But that act of resistance certainly is impactful. And so my art is about that. My art is about the way I look at what is happening around me, what I decide is important for me, and how I translate that through allegory, through metaphor, to a personal lexicon of imagery. Because every artist has that. Let me give you literature, for example. If I say Chetan Bhagat, all of you will understand the kind of genre of writing that he has. Now, if I say Rabindranath Tagore, you're not going to expect Rabindranath Tagore to read like Chetan Bhagat, or for Chetan Bhagat to read like Rabindranath Tagore. And that is because an individual who decides that they have something that they want to put out decides for themselves where they position their perceptions to the world around them. And so that's what I would say. So for anybody who's interested in my work, I think they would need to, in some ways, inform themselves to read some things that either have, written by others, or to hear what one's engagement with the world is, in order for one to understand what one is doing.
Great, ma'am. So we are actually moving on towards now a bit of students guideline kind of a thing from your end. So as art students, what are the essential aspects one has to understand in order to have a longer perspective of painting or a practice?
Start off by working really hard. I always ask my young friends or my students, how many hours they sleep. And they look at me thinking, oh, here's somebody who's like, 8 hours, 9 hours. I say, what? So at the end of the day, you should be sleeping only 2 or 3 hours a day, and you have to work at least 18 hours. So I think that the rigors of placing yourself to be very disciplined, to be informed, where information is not something that you are plucking off a tree because you think that it looks like a luscious fruit, but actually you're allergic to it. You have to take things that make sense to you, you know? And so, if I ask you to wear, a thin vest in the middle of minus 20 degrees, as a fashion designer, you're going to say, but, Rekha, I'm going to just freeze to death. So you have to take what is relevant for you within the relevant conditions of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And so though it sounds very silly to put it in those words, I think students have to have, and I cannot stress this word enough, the humility to learn and not to believe that success is the only factor that they have to be targeting. You have to actually target, creating a holistic comprehension of knowledge. And when knowledge, where information translates and percolates into becoming knowledge. Information alone is not enough. And so whether you're an artist, whether you're a fashion designer, whether you're a engineer, what you need to do is you need to be able to take all that is around you, know it very, very, very well. And once you know it very well, you can then decide that you don't need it and you can put it aside and then hold only those things that finally best enhance how you can articulate a practice, a deliverance, an articulation that makes sense to you. Trying to impress the world is a very boring thing. It's the most boring thing. And whether you know English well, or whether you know Hindi well, or it's not important. None of those things are important. What is important is a genuineness of spirit to find and seek and perceive and be purposeful, to make your life purposeful.
Very well said, ma'am. So, ma'am, moving on to the next one, this was so amazing that I can't get over the way you said it all for the students. What is must for an artist?
I think it's the same for everybody, this is what I said that, first of all, I maybe I should start off by saying, Ali, that I wish more students, more individuals, more regular citizens, anybody. I wish we would open up our lives to being curious about things that don't necessarily, are not necessarily going to be the choices we make permanently. So to open up our lives and be curious about things would allow us to have more empathy and more compassion with the world. By that I mean, of course it's important for a student to be rigorous in their practice, to spend hours in their own pursuit of whatever their subjects may be. But no subject actually exists, no field actually exists, no territory actually exists in isolation. All things are sewn together. It's like saying, I'm going to travel from here to Delhi, and if you go by road, every piece of land is, meets another piece of land. So though you're going from one designated geography to another, it's all tied up together. And I think that learning is like that. The world of education should really be much, much more interdisciplinary. People should stop, pretending that, knowledge is a capsule, that you can just take it, swallow it, and know it. You must have a certain endeavor. You must make a certain endeavor. You must hold your curiosities, and you should actually be less opinionated. I think opinions are boring. They create prejudices more often than not. What you need to do is you need to hold clarity. There's a difference between clarity and being opinionated. And clarity allows you to reach that level to substantiate why you're thinking the way you think. So you further enhance your information and your knowledge by inquiry. So just having an opinion because somebody else said it or somebody else was doing it isn't really the best way to achieve having perceptions. So what would I say to all students, whether you're an artist, or whether you're an art student, or whether you're a practicing artist, whether you're an engineering student or a practicing engineer, you need to look at the world around you with more compassion and to see yourself, always in some ways with a scope to add something to yourself. It's a dangerous premise to believe that because I've got a degree that, abhi theek hai, I know everything. I mean, I may know nothing about art, even though I'm 62 years old. And that should prompt me to hold an alertness, to hold my consciousness with an alertness. Because what we generally tend to do is we start getting too comfortable and complacent in life. No? So I have a home and I have a, grandchild and I have a cat and I have a cup of tea and, life is great. No, life is not great because you have these, things that may be very nice, but, they're just, they're in many ways, many more things that add greater substance to your life than the cup of tea. So you need to also, I think every individual needs to shake themselves out of this sort of comatose state we get into. Because the more we think of success, the less we are open to being seekers. We don't seek things in life. Everybody wants to tell you, about, maine ye award mila and, madam, see my work because, I got this. Awards are boring things, I always say to people, examinations are just a celebration of what you know every day. That's it. At the end of the day, every day should be an exam for you, You should be testing yourself in a way that you find that your sharpness is there for yourself. My sharpness being delivered to you as a gift is immaterial, What are you going to do with it? But my sharpness of consciousness and alertness for myself is what will make me live. And we tend to see, professions separated from who we are. Now, I'm an artist, full stop, or I'm Rekha, full stop. There is a completeness to that. It's not separated from, that whether I'm a mother, I'm still mother, artist, wife, friend, daughter. All of this is the completeness. You don't ever step out of these roles. They're with you all the time. And so I think what I would say is do whatever you do as a student, looking to see how you can create a space of learning that is of value to you and that holds the truth of your existence, that is formulated from, sometimes, Ali, it's great to have a bad teacher, because if you have a bad teacher, you then know what you need. I've had great teachers, but I've had some rather iffy ones too. And those iffy teachers also are very valuable because they make you think, oh my God, there's so much more I need to know because I don't want to be like that. And so, you learn from everything. You have to have respect for everything in that sense.
Very well said. So, besides that, ma'am, what are the techniques or the mediums that you like to work with, or you worked in past also? You're still enjoying working with those techniques and mediums?
Ali, there are many things that I have put my hand to. For example, I have done, worked with ceramics. I've had facilitators who have, helped me with a project where I have chosen to use, or have been invited and therefore chosen to use, ceramics as a medium. Let me answer this differently. As an artist, or any artist, okay, if you're a farmer and you want to dig, you've got very dry soil, you're not going to take your eating fork and start digging. So you will always take something that is going to allow you the result you want. So as an artist, when I decide what I want to articulate, I then am automatically deciding what is it that will allow me to articulate it the best. So I generally work with oil and acrylic just as a base, and oil paint on canvas. I work a lot with paper. I've done a lot of printmaking. I have done physical things that exist, but which hold visuals as well. So it's difficult. I mean, what I would say is there is a plethora of materials, and one chooses. So if I'm giving you ice cream, unless I'm, MasterChef Australia, I'm not going to put salt in the ice cream because you're going to throw it back at me saying, what is this, Rekha? This is a very salty ice cream you're giving me. So generally you put the ingredient that you need to get the best result that you feel would best lend itself to what you want to say. So maybe salty ice cream is good. I don't know. But
No, I don't think. Well, some people enjoy it. I've seen some people trying out ice cream with garlic also. So that is the taste of different people. Every which way is personal, professional front. Yeah. Like how you said bad teacher. So you know what are the things that you have to improve. Uh, anyways, tell me, how do you measure success of an artist?
I just told you success is a very boring thing for me. I'll tell you what success would mean for me. I think success would mean for me that history remembers me. But then I would not be around to know whether history remembers me. So I don't want to live, as I said, trying to impress anybody. I have been very fortunate that people believe in me. I'm extremely humbled by that. The fact that people hold my articulation as valuable, hold my intentions as being something that they choose to want to communicate with. This is extremely, humbling to anyone. And I don't take any of that lightly. But it is not something that I think that I would crown myself with any pride. What would make me, what is relevant and significant for me is that I don't ever succumb to the trappings and that I don't allow these kind of notions of success to kill the growth of who I would want to be. I think success for me is trying to be a better human being every day. I'm not religious, Ali. I had chose, to give up religion many, many years ago. I was 13 years old when I gave up religion by choice. And I did that because I think that it's a greater struggle to learn to be able to hold the entire world as being of importance. And so therefore, I think, look at how privileged we are in India, in a country like India, that we have people who come to help us in our home, that my freedom to be able to be who I choose to be with my time, so where I can take my time and invest it, is because I have this wonderful lady, Komal, who comes and helps me on a daily basis, leaving her family behind so that I can gain more freedom in my time. So what is my success based on? It's based on all the support systems. I have this amazing gallery. I have this amazing relationship with my gallerist, Geeta Mehran. None of this would be possible. My existence wouldn't be possible without all this belief and all this nurturing. The fact that my parents, they were proud to have this, very ordinary child, but invested in me such confidence. I'm nothing without all of this. And so therefore success is a very term, One should just try to live with a consciousness. That's important.
That's very humble. Okay. Which were the art practices that inspired you as a student at the time, when you started?
Again, I must say I was so lucky to be part of a educational environment of that time. I joined the Faculty of Fine Arts in 1976. Some of you weren't even born then. Most of you weren't
Yeah.
even born then. And, that was an environment where we were taught to look at so many things with the openness of being like in a candy store. Everything was to excite your senses, and everything was to be seen as a wonderment. It was like being Alice in Wonderland all the time. And I think you grew in this enchantment of looking at things without judgment and letting things come to hold meaning for you over the period of time. I must say that I was taught art history, for example, under the magical oration of somebody like Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh. So every day that we would go to his class, we would be sitting there, transported into these worlds and of complete delight, from Syria to Persia to, Tamil Nadu to wherever. And everything was just given and gifted to you with such delight. And so you gathered in your imaginative self so much to ponder about, to be delighted by, that everybody became your best friend in a way. And so I think that, from primitive art to, modern, contemporary articulation, east to west, folk, urban, ritualistic practices, tapestry, jewelry, fashion, we were thrown into this khichdi, this wonderful cauldron, of magic potions and everything stirring around. And then you sort of, kind of dipped your finger in and you started tasting. You started tasting the individual things that this thing is made up of. And so I think I delighted for many years, in my 20s, I delighted in looking and knowing. I think perhaps what I would say is that maybe because I was born and brought up in India, I think the figurative traditions of an art practice became something that came to me more easily. That the identification of finding myself within the figurative deliverances of a language. I think that perhaps would be the only thing I would say specifically. I don't know if I had been, born and brought up in Paris or in, Scandinavia, whether that would be the same. So I do think you're a product of, the environments you belong to, and then how you're nurtured into the openness of other things.
Okay. Ma'am, we'll take last 2, 3 questions, and then we have a little fun session wherein, we'll have very quick questions and quick answers.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, do you think art and politics are interrelated?
Well, I can't say that it's interrelated for everybody. I think that life, if you're looking at art, art is about, everything that exists in the world. For me, politics has been very much part of my territory. But I can't insist that art and politics is a must for everybody. Do I think it coexists together? I think it does, because I believe that art chronicles. Artists are people who sort of sift through life and and extract. So for me, the answer would be yes, but I don't know whether. And I think also one has to be careful in understanding what the term politics means, because I don't think that we're talking about propagandist art, or we're talking about, so art that came from sort of socialist, political spaces. I think they're much more subtle, They're wonderful artists like Nilima Sheikh and Arpita Singh, who are great examples of people whose work, is fleshed through, sort of political, where their art reflects their political
They're political, yes.
places. Without it resonates in ways that are to do with the allegories that you see in it. It's not something in your face and descriptive, and so I think it's important to understand. And then you have other artists. You'll have somebody like Jitesh Kalat, or you will maybe even somebody.
Anita Dubey, maybe.
Anita Dubey, a very good example. So you have many people who can be much more overtly political, and that doesn't mean that there is only one manner by which you can deliver your politics.
You actually, answered my second question also without asking. It's all combined gone, because I think it was all interrelated with these artists also, about politics and art, because they have been leading it also really well. Like Arpana Kaur and Nilima Sheikh, you already said it.
No, I spoke about Arpita Singh.
Arpita, okay.
And Nilima Sheikh. Not to say that Arpana Kaur is not a good artist. I spoke about these two.
Okay. So now tell me, what is the politics of art?
Let's go to the next question.
Some content on that?
I don't know really what you mean, because these are all sort of semantic plays, no? I mean, I've already explained to you, a territory that I come from. I don't know what is the politics of art. I don't know what you mean by that. Maybe I'm too ignorant to answer that. But I think that let's do something that is, where students can benefit from it.
Okay. All right. So we move on to the next segment, which is our fun questions and quick answers. The first one is, how do you see the relation between a paintbrush and colors? Something philosophical. Since you've been a writer.
Ali, this is like coffee with Ali, not coffee with I don't know. I mean, paintbrush is what carries the paint to my surface. So I suppose it is a bridge.
Okay, you've been very bright with colors, but I would like to know one favorite color of yours.
Oh, I like red.
You like red, okay. Teaching or painting at this point?
Oh no, I'm only a painter. All else is incidental.
Okay. According to you, what is the percentage of artists which brings change in the society by their artwork?
I would have no answer to that. All I would say is that I do believe that art truly has an immense power that can impact people. And it depends on whether there is an openness. And we have histories like the Mexican artists who have, done amazing works that were relevant to bringing about change. So I can't say. I think we have organizations like Sehemat in India that have done amazing things related to creating awareness and bringing people together. So sorry, I can't give you the quick and funny answer.
No, it's okay. I mean, I just, because of, you've been around in the fraternity for such a long time. And, I thought even a random fun answer would have been a little fun.
And my family always says I lack humor. So you really got the wrong person for the fun answers.
Okay, moving on to the next one. How do you support young artists?
We have had the Collective Studio Baroda, my partner Surendra Nair and myself. But we would actually, there are many things we do. Not necessarily do I want to put it out there on a public platform, only because I think it draws too much attention to the fact that we do, which I'm not really interested in. All I can say is that we hold great belief to nurture, because I think that is something that we have received as artists over the years. And so I think it's an obligation and a duty that must be performed, that we should be there for people without them having to ask. I think that's important.
Yeah. We're moving on to, again, the next one. We all have our bills to pay. Do artists get paid well? Your answer.
I don't know. I suppose depends on what stage of your career you're at. So yes, I suppose we there are many artists who have not been able to secure the kind of financial security that they deserve. I do, again, as I said, I'm sorry I can't give you the fun answer, but I do
No,
believe.
no, it's okay. I wanted you've been very real, so I think you should speak what's in your mind.
Yeah. So therefore, I do believe that there are many institutions. I think that the government assistance to artists should be much more. I know that there are a lot of wonderful opportunities created by individuals, uh, corporate houses, and individuals, but I think there's not enough. I think that we need to have much more. We have a huge uh, uh, there often a lot of there are often budgets allocated which don't get used or which go to people in the manner in which dosti I don't like this dosti at all, but that's unfortunately the case when a corruption enters enters certain realms. So my views are that I think there should be many more funding agencies that allow for artists to be able to create their ideas. I think that they should be, governments should create studio spaces that can be rented at nominal prices for young artists. I think that certain budget from every government should go to people being able to apply for something and to be trusted that they are using it for their art practice. So yes, I feel that more money should be there and available for uh, artists to be able to um, flourish in terms of making, creating their art. Because all art is not necessarily sold, Ali. I think this is
Yes, yes.
I think too often, especially the media, tend to equate artists and film stars. And I don't like the word celebrity. I find it very problematic. I have some very lovely friends in the film industry, very, very humble, very beautiful people, and they work very hard for what they get. Having said that, it's a different world. We don't necessarily earn money from everything we do. And so a young artist who spends 1 year may sell only two or three things. And so I think that it is the obligation of a democracy to recognize the role that cultural practices play in the overriding sense of creating a healthy environment of life.
Okay. So, who's your favorite artist? One artist?
Oh, it doesn't exist like that for me. I think that maybe it would be the anonymous miniaturist from Akbar's atelier.
Okay. Last question of the day. Uh, Traditional medium or digital medium? What is fun?
Fun seems to be a big word in your vocabulary. No, my work is never about fun. Let me take that word off the table.
Something that you celebrate all the time, or maybe it's been comfortable.
No, nothing is comfortable in life for me. I don't choose to make life comfortable. I think it would be very boring if it was. But
Ali, it's over.
No, I think 2 3 minutes left. She'll just join and wait.
Okay.
She has to give us last guest. We'll wait for 30 seconds, I guess. Yes, we were anyways at the end of the session, but for you guys, we have more coming up. I think she's here.
Apologies.
Welcome back, ma'am. No worries, no worries. You're waiting. I was almost ending because I thought in case if you. Anyways, so that was our last question. But before we go off, we would like to have your last words for our students and our viewers who've been listening to you all this while, and also upcoming creatives who are under practice right now.
Mm-hmm. My last words? I think hold confidence and belief in whatever you're going to do. And I think also be honest and look for things in life where you can take others along with you. I think these ideas of independence are often over-exaggerated. I think education should teach us that we learn in collective environments, and I think we should understand that there is a lesson in that itself. That the idea of a collective environment means that we belong within communities, and we need to make the community something special, whatever that it means within the journey of our living. So.
Thank you so very much for taking your time out and be with us here today.
It's my utter pleasure, Ali.
Thank you so very much once again. We have more coming up for you guys. For more updates, please log on to Facebook, like our page, Parul University. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at Parul University, also Parul PU Design. And meanwhile, please take care of yourself well, stay healthy. Till we meet again, this is your host, Ali Ahmed Sheikh, signing off. Bye.